Hello, everyone. My name is Satyam, and I'm one of the co-founders for Aporeto. Um, I'm here basically to kind of give you a little bit of an insight into what we actually do, what our architecture looks like, and what are the challenges that we've been facing and resolving in the last few years of our journey at Aporeto. So um, let's get right into what do we really do. So Aporeto is an identity-powered security, cloud security company. The fundamental thing is that as different customers are transitioning in from private cloud into AWS or using different combinations, what happens is there's heterogeneity in the cloud infrastructure. At the same time, there's heterogeneity in the application infrastructure. Whether you're doing like EC2 instances or microservices and auto-scaling groups in VMs, as we move forward, containers, container orchestration tools, whether it's Kubernetes, Mesos, different aspects of it, or for that matter, even serverless angles like AWS Lambda or other serverless architectures. So what happens is, across all this heterogeneous infrastructure, the security becomes a problem. And what Aporeto provides is a unified security control across all of this infrastructure using application identity. So think of us as Okta, but for applications. We take your applications, we normalize the identity across the board so that you can have a simpler security model from that perspective. And what that means is, in a traditional world, up top, to secure your applications with direct connections with like a lot of firewalls, coarse granularity, ACLs, and things like that, SDNs for that matter, we would have to deal with a lot of complexity. And when you look at it, when you look at your on-premise solution, the security architecture is completely different when you transition everything over to AWS. And then you have to look at different security paradigms from that perspective. So AWS does a fantastic job giving us the shared security model, brings it up to that point, but then it's up to the enterprises that when they consume these services, the application security aspects are strong, and that's where kind of Aporeto fits in. So basically, if you were to go utilize Aporeto aspects to secure your cloud infrastructure, you get a uniform security model, whether it's your on-premise architecture or your AWS. And what we do fundamentally is we simplify the operations, we simplify your security operations, and then because of the simplicity and the strength in the security, you'll get a much stronger security posture across your complete application infrastructure stack. So for Aporeto, um, the heterogeneity aspects of things, if you look at them to the left-hand side, basically there's a lot of different infrastructure that you're running into, whether it's VMware, AWS, or for that matter, other things that you might be running on-premise. At the same time, the developers are constantly choosing different application infrastructure that they want to deploy, whether you're doing it with Chef and Puppet on your VMs, or you're using container orchestration tools like Kubernetes, or for that matter, OpenShift or Mesos or any of those things. What Aporeto does is we come up with enforcer form factors that help you secure all of these heterogeneous application infrastructure in different ways, whether you're doing a Linux service in a Linux VM, or you're running it as a container. When you talk about Kubernetes, it could be an Envoy or an Istio plugin. Fundamentally providing you a unified security plane across all your infrastructure, whether it is multi-cluster in a single AWS region, multiple regions, multi-cluster, multi-zone, all of those things come automatically. And even from that perspective, the serverless architectures, you're trying to secure your serverless, one component has moved to serverless, everything else is still containerized or sitting in the VMs, we can bridge that gap completely. And the way we do that is by using our security orchestrator in the middle. Different customers have different requirements, and so you can utilize our SaaS platform so that you don't have to manage all the security orchestration platform, or we can deploy an instance for you on-prem. So as we engage with more and more customers, we're deploying more of these security orchestrator instances. And at the same time, it's very integration friendly. We don't want you to reinvent the wheel or boil the whole ocean. If you guys have like SIEM systems that you're already using, like Splunk or Oxide, we can feed data into it so you can look at all your security data there. At the same time, we have this concept of application identity where we can consume data from vulnerability scanners that you might have, whether it is Tenable, Qualys, Twistlock, doesn't matter. We are able to ingest information from your CI/CD pipeline and give you your cloud objects as a first-class citizen, whether it's an ELB, an ALB, or an NLB, or whatever you choose to use in your deployments. So why are customers, for us, using Aporeto? The fundamental thing is they're getting a much stronger security model which works across their infrastructure, so it looks all the way back into old Linux versions at the same time as the development team is going and onboarding new technologies with containers or serverless. It works across the board, and there's a significant ROI returns that you're actually getting. And one of the analysis that I've just put in from a big customer that we have, as they're seeing that as they deploy more and more enforcer instances, they're seeing a significant savings for them. So now, as we are building this product, I mean, my main job is to make sure that we're delivering good quality product in production that can be scaled for multiple different customers and replicated for that matter. So I'll dive a little bit into the architecture. Basically, we are a microservices-based company. We have a lot of microservices and more that we build pretty much on a weekly basis, whether it is like an identity provisioning or it's a certificate issuing service, our data analytics platform, cloud discovery, cloud integration, all of these kind of microservices. So we have a very rich set of microservices. And as we started out this journey, there was very limited options that we could utilize. At the same time, on the bottom, I've just demonstrated a bunch of enforcers, a lot of different form factors. I mentioned that earlier. Envoy plugins, Linux services, Kubernetes daemon sets, basically securing the complete infrastructure. So if you look at it, we have a lot of microservices, and we have a lot of integrations into AWS to make everything in AWS a first-class citizen available to be consumed in terms of security models. So, and I'll skip that because that's our summary, the security orchestrator with a lot of microservices and enforcer form factors. So as we started out this journey in 2016, what I found myself personally doing is hiring a lot many more people to basically not work on the core product, but work on packaging the product, right? Helm was, at that time, fairly new, not production grade. Kubernetes, we had so many different options, whether you were looking at the kubeadm stuff, whether you were looking at the Heptio CloudFormation scripts, or just vanilla Kubernetes, and even KOps, and all different things, right? So we didn't have a production-grade Kubernetes that we could run in the AWS framework at that time, and at the same time, we didn't have a Helm equivalent of the tool. So we started building all of these things for bringing up production-grade Kubernetes and configuration and packaging equivalent tools for Helm. So significant investments were going in that area, a lot of management overheads. A lot of my engineers would just stay awake till late, keeping the Kubernetes clusters up and sane at odd hours and things like that. And as a company, as a startup, where we were significantly investing in the security aspects of things, we were finding ourselves putting a lot of investment in building all of these tools. That was our initial year as we were kind of starting to do the POCs and stuff. Now, fast forward just a little bit. The first thing that came to us as a blessing was the Helm. And we very quickly switched over to Helm, converted all of our packaging and stuff, using containers on Kubernetes and utilizing Helm to a good extent. There was an additional thing that we also realized during this time frame is that Kubernetes wasn't just as real. Every time we would go deploy any of these instances, what would happen is we would keep debugging like the networking layer for the Kubernetes, what CNI plugin is being used, what kind of an environment is it, and that became a lot of challenge for us. And to simplify that, we also adopted a different form factor for our orchestrator using Docker Swarm. And one of the extensions that we've kind of made is our standard Helm charts work across Kubernetes and Docker Swarm. It's a pretty nifty utility that we've created. And so using the same containers, same everything, we just use different chart templates, and now we can utilize Helm to do streamlined deployments, whether it is on Kubernetes or Docker Swarm. Again, we were in the developer program. We were trying out the EKS to basically get to a point where it's stable so that we could run our SaaS platform on that. So a lot of learnings that we went through, a lot of sweat and tears to kind of keep our production system up and running, still using the unmanaged Kubernetes all the way into like 2017. Then as we gained more experience into the Kubernetes, the EKS, as Amazon came out with that, we were amongst the first few to basically adopt that. And clearly, the stability that we actually experienced over the course of the whole 2018 and early 2019, EKS fundamentally has been working for us very well. I would definitely vouch that it is in the production grade deployment stage. And at this point in time, we're still now working on differentiated services that we need to build in our product. And luckily, we can channel all our SREs that were just managing Kubernetes clusters to do more meaningful things on the product side of it. And we become one of the key users for the EKS infrastructure. It's working out beautifully for us. So that's all I had. That's what I wanted to share. It was more from a high-level perspective, that from a business perspective, as we are trying to build a product, how do you channelize your resources into the right thing, and how do you make your company work on differentiated services that you could be building as opposed to managing infrastructure? And that's been our journey so far.
Great, thank
you.
you. Let's give it up for Aporeto. Were there any questions?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. So, concerning your focus on the security, and we are now trying to build some of our automatic provisioned infrastructure. So we had a service for the certificate generation. So did you have any customers, or will you have any customers that will require mutually authenticated certs exchange for, LDAP authentication or whatever? So how do you provision those in a dynamic infrastructure? Because usually the mutually authenticated cert, it cannot be a wildcard because of security requirements, et cetera, and we're struggling with this right now. How you deal with this kind of problem of associating, a static cert to a dynamic infrastructure?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, one of the key innovations that we have at Aporeto is the concept of this application identity. Most of our customers are utilizing this because think about an application identity as a set of multiple key value pairs. And then what happens is, in a dynamic infrastructure, what's going to happen is, in your containerized platform, if you go and basically say, scale this service up from 50 containers to 500 containers, what's going to happen is all 500 of them are going to get unique application identities, but there is a commonality, which basically says, well, I am running these containers in EKS, in Amazon West. By the way, this is application tier X for a major project Y. And so we collect all of those entities, and when you scale up your containers, pretty much every time a container pops up, we go and make a single API call to basically say, what are my policies, what certificates should I be presenting to the customers, and basically it collects all that information. That's why we have the security orchestrator. So the enforcer will do that on behalf of the service. It's also capable of providing a lot many more services. Again, we solve some of these problems in a very innovative manner. I would definitely ask you guys to come talk to our sales team, and they can tell you a little more. We have our booth as well. They can show you some demos, and you could get benefits from that.
Thank you.